Hi, my name's Cody, and I'm a software engineer. This video is sort of half guide for others, half journal for myself. Here, I'll talk about how I explore existing systems and how to conduct informational interviews. This is part of a series on building software as a solo developer working within existing systems. If you want to watch the previous video about how to find what to work on and ways to structure your notes, I'll put a link in the description. There are a lot of different ways to explore the functionality of a project, and you'll find that they all have different pros and cons. Regardless of which way you pick, I can say it's worth it to get good at this sort of thing. You'll have to do this in 100% of software jobs. Besides figuring out which process works for you, actually learning about the content of an existing system will take dedicated effort. It's not something you can Google or look up elsewhere because every software project is different. I've tried many times to skimp on learning, and every time it's bitten me later. It's always more efficient to put in work up front to produce high-quality knowledge rather than diving in and getting lost in the weeds. As for my process, I start by identifying what I'm looking to learn about. This can be something broad, like how does auth work, or something specific, like how is a 4.3 response generated by our GraphQL infrastructure. When I'm taking notes, I write my question on the top of a piece of paper, along with the date. Next, I figure out what level of detail I'll need in order to gather the knowledge I'm after. For example, do I need to know every single way a user can authenticate, or do I just care about how they log in with a username and password on the web? Learning every aspect of a complex system is a gargantuan task, and you need to be able to narrow down the parts you're looking at, such that you don't spend all your time investigating. Find a way to diagram the systems you're learning about so you can understand how all the pieces fit together. I like to diagram on a physical piece of paper with boxes and arrows, annotated with file names, functions, and line numbers, like this. Notice I have a clear objective at the top and the date. I've come back to reference these sorts of notes months or even years later. You'd be surprised how often I'm asked about something I've worked on in the past. I usually don't remember much, but my notes do. Like I said before, there are lots and lots of ways to take notes, but the one thing I know for sure is that you've got to write things down. Getting information out of your brain and onto the page is the biggest thing you can do here, regardless of the way it's presented. As you go along, I'm sure you'll find a note-taking style that you like most. Interviewing stakeholders will probably be the primary way you start to turn your broad project requirements into something more specific. Here's a process that's worked for me. First, create a list of people that might be interested in the thing you're wanting to build. Then, categorize those people. Are they developers, designers, PMs, admins and users? What domain do they work in? Where are they located? Anything you could think of that would group them together. This is roughly what's called a persona. Use these groupings to help think about the needs of potential users and generate lines of inquiry specific to them. Some examples. I'm working on improving X. Can you tell me about how you currently use it? How much time do you spend doing Y every week, every month? Can you tell me about times in the past when you and your team have tried to make doing Y better? How come you do A? Why not B instead? What does A do for you that B doesn't? And what would happen if doing A was 50% more effective? What about 50% less effective? Lead with curiosity here and assume everything you already know about the topic is false, either outright or in small, subtle ways. Anything you think you know will only serve to hinder your learning. You're not here to judge, only to understand. And then finally, set up meetings with all the people on your list. After doing a lot of these sorts of informational interviews, I notice they tend to follow a similar pattern. This probably won't be too surprising, but here's what I see anyways. First, I say hello and do some intro banter to help establish a relationship with the participant and put them at ease. Then, I ask if I can record the meeting and keep the contents in a public Google Drive folder for historical purposes, and I record the meeting if they allow it. If they don't allow it, I take notes by hand. I'll talk more about this note-taking process in the next section. Then, I intro the problem I'm trying to solve, the reasons I think it's important, how I plan to solve it, and how I came to speak with them at this particular moment. Giving participants context goes a long way towards making the meeting more efficient, because it communicates what you do and don't already know. I use my list of prepared questions as a guide for the conversation, while still allowing for tangents and the like. After I've exhausted my list of questions and followed my curiosity, I ask them if there's anybody they'd recommend I talk to, and add them to the list of people to interview. I wrap up and tell them that I'll transcribe the meeting and upload the video to the public Google Drive folder if they're curious. Most people don't bother to look, but I always try to let them know it's there if they want it. Then, I ask them if I can add them to the public Slack channel so they can stay updated with progress and participate in any discussions. And then I thank them profusely and tell them how this interview will help the project succeed. And finally, as an optional step, after the meeting, I give them feedback in the company HR system or directly to their manager. I say something like, "Oh, Alice was so helpful when I wanted to learn about auth. She gave an excellent overview of the system, and she was even able to answer my specific questions about error codes. I really appreciate her kindness and her willingness to help me with my project. It's going to be a big help." Giving feedback like this will help the other person in their next performance review and reward them for helping you, and make it more likely they'll continue to do so in the future. Remember that these meetings take time and effort for the participants. Anything you can do to make them easier is a good thing. Now, even though I've given a rough outline here, you definitely don't want to follow this to a T. Be flexible, be human. In general, it makes people feel weird and awkward if you follow a script with them. Most meetings these days happen over something like Zoom. I've tried taking notes during these, but I always find it hard to do and engage with participants at the same time. There are AI note-taking tools out there, but if you're working at anything bigger than a startup, you'll probably have to go through a procurement process in order to buy and use them at work, which you definitely want to avoid if you can help it. Instead, I've had good success participating in meetings fully while recording them at the same time, and then taking notes by rewatching the videos right after. That might sound like a lot of work, but you'll actually find that rewatching the videos and then taking notes will help you retain and organize the information you learn much better. In the end, I find it to be quite an efficient process for learning. So, here's what I do. After intros, I ask the participant if I can record the meeting. Don't record if they don't agree. Then I hit record. You might want to test this out with a friend first before you use it in a live setting. Every video chat platform is different, and so you definitely want to avoid bumbling around with the tech in the middle of an important meeting. Make sure the recording starts when you hit the button, stops when you hit it again, and is saved in a place you know you can find later. During the meeting, don't take notes. Give your full attention to the participant. And finally, after the meeting is over, immediately open the recording and take notes. Don't wait to do this so that the information is fresh in your mind. I like to format my notes like this. As a side note, pay attention to when you go, "huh," as you're watching. That's a sign you've learned something important and is probably worth writing down. I call this hms per minute. If you're building features in a complex, undocumented system, you'll probably need to talk to other humans in order to learn from them, build in their domain, get them to agree to use your tool once it's complete, or get them to agree to help you build your tool. If you want to do anything other than learn from them, make sure you have a good reason that can be clearly articulated to somebody who doesn't know what you're working on. You'll probably want to find the support of a leader in your organization so that they can lend their influence to your cause. Bring them along or confirm their buy-in on your project before making requests to other teams. Requesting an informational interview is probably the easiest ask you can make of somebody. It requires the least effort on their part and usually isn't too difficult to pull off. Use the previous sections as a guide for how to prepare and structure these sorts of meetings. Getting another team to let you build in their domain could either be very easy or very hard, depending on the team and your company culture. Every team has its own culture surrounding the domains they control, and they're usually hesitant to let an outsider trample on the garden they've so carefully tended. Getting another team to use your project is usually quite difficult. Realize that adopting new technologies can be very disruptive. Although it isn't impossible to get another team to agree to use something new, Just keep in mind that most teams have a reason for what they're doing and usually aren't too willing to change. To help make your case, make sure you provide them a good experience by creating an onboarding plan, creating documentation, providing ongoing support, and creating an offboarding plan if they ultimately decide they want to go back to the way things used to be. Each team is different, and so there's no set methodology here. You'll definitely get to experience a little bit of what sales is like as you work to understand somebody else's needs and pitch them something that can ultimately be a benefit to you both. Getting another team to help you build something is usually the hardest ask to make. Teams typically have their roadmap set for the next 1 to 6 months, and getting them to drop planned work in favor of something new is a big request. If you can make it early enough, though, it'll be much easier to agree to. Teams typically plan their work based on the goals and priorities of their department head. If you can get buy-in from them that your project is important, they can help adjust the team's roadmap and allow your project to take up more space. Finally, all of these requests are easier to make if you've already established a good relationship with the parties involved. Make sure to be kind and take time to meet the other humans in your organization. You never know when you'll need to make a request to them. When you're making requests of other people, you won't always get a positive response. So, how do you deal with that when it happens? It may seem silly to talk about this. Isn't the answer just to get over it and move on? But hearing no can sometimes be really demoralizing. Don't underestimate the impact it can have on your motivation. In particular, hearing no many times in a row can make you feel stuck and like there's no point in even trying next time. This can be really crushing. So before you make a request, make sure you have an accurate accounting of what you hope to achieve with it and how big of an impact it'll have on your project. Doing this work beforehand can go a long way towards cushioning the impact of a rejection. Again, this may seem a little kooky for something as unemotional as software development, but we're all human, and it might be the thing that prevents a string of roadblocks from sliding into something like burnout. Please make sure to pay attention to how you're feeling when you're doing this kind of stuff. Your emotions are just as valid as your rational thoughts and can give you just as much information. Personally, the best way I've found to deal with no is by finding another way to the same place. Sometimes this can be identifying a solution that's different and just as good, but oftentimes you'll need to compromise in some way. This can feel like a loss, but it doesn't have to be. Often as you're building something, you have a lot of assumptions about the way things should be or the things that users will find valuable. Before you begin to really fight for something or get upset that it isn't possible, make sure that thing is actually valuable to your users. I can't tell you the number of times I've been ready to go to bat for some feature I thought was critical, only to have a user tell me that it meant nothing to them. More often than not, the thing you're ready to fight for isn't really a priority for the people you're trying to serve. All right, that's it for this video. I've told you how I explore systems, interview stakeholders, take notes, and deal with no. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions or things in this area you found helpful for yourself, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to learn from you. In the next video, I'll talk about my experience building as a solo developer, going through the procurement process, and collecting feedback on something after it's been shipped. Thanks for watching.